Anyways, grateful to have Carlos Becerros with us today, the director of UDOT, to do again a presentation, and we'll have a panel discussion. But if you've not had a chance to have some breakfast, please do so. It's just out on the front there. And then if you need the restroom facilities, if you go immediately out these doors, they'll just be right straight across the hall. And of course, just for safety, you have an exit here, of course, out the back here, and then the front door you came in, I hope. But anyways, with that, I'll just, again, turn the time over to Carlos, and then we'll go from there.
Thanks, Joey. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, thanks. Makes it a lot easier. Gonna make this pretty casual. I only have 2 slides and I'm only gonna turn those on right at the end, okay? And like Joey said, we have a panel, and I was sitting over here and Lisa asked me, who's on the panel? I said, you're on the panel. So we're not as prepared as we sometimes might like to be. So I'm just going to kind of wing it. And so any questions you have on any single thing is at any time is very welcomed. I'm going to talk a little bit about a general sense of really what we're about, where we're going. And then I'll give you a little bit of a legislative update. It was I'll say it was a bizarre session, and it was not a very, there wasn't a lot that came out of it for us. But I think the good thing is we didn't lose any money. And so when you go into a session with no money, that's always a good thing. We did get new stuff to do. That again, that's part of the bizarre part of it. These aren't really typical things that we do as a DOT, but it probably reflects the experience that the legislators have had with us, that we just kind of get stuff done. And that really is where I want to start. Let's acknowledge that the place that we're in. I think it's pretty unique. I've been in this business now for almost 40 years, and there's been times where we haven't been in a position of trust. And we have the trust with the legislature, with the governor, and I would say with the citizens as well. Now, we hear from a lot of citizens that aren't happy with some of the things that we do, but that doesn't represent the majority, I can tell you that. And, so I think part of what gives us the strength of our collective organizations is the way we do things. Between the DOT, the contractors, the consultants, the suppliers, it's really an amazing partnership that takes place. And sometimes I don't think we fully appreciate how powerful that is. You can imagine, they kind of think of us, the public, even the elected officials, as this monolith, as one thing, delivering these great projects. But it's a lot of complex pieces with a lot of individuals, and every individual, all of us have our own quirkiness to us, and but it all works. It comes together, and we're able to do really hard stuff. And I like to think that we need to start with this idea of having a big, bold vision, of doing stuff that makes a difference. And I'll go back a little over 4 years ago, and those of you that attended our annual conference heard me talk about this a little bit. When we had the governor's transition. So Governor, then Lieutenant Governor Cox ran to replace Governor Herbert in November. And then I've been through this a bunch of times. So it typically happens is, there's a little bit of catching your breath. And then the governor-elect will start to think about who he or she is going to put into the cabinet positions. And you get invited into a meeting. And so the email came. I had a 30-minute window to go up and meet in the lieutenant governor's office, scheduled in like the 2nd or 3rd week of December. And so as I left my office, I've got an assistant that's been with me now for 25 years, who I just kind of said, well, and she knew what was up. She goes, it's either I have a job or I don't have a job. It's that kind of a meeting. And so drove up to the Capitol, walked in to the Lieutenant Governor's office, and there is John Pierpont, who is now still is the current Chief of Staff. He at the time was the Director of Workforce Services. So the two of them were sitting there, and I'd known the governor for a period of time. His father, actually, Eddie Cox, served on our Transportation Commission, and I had the uncomfortable experience of when Spencer was appointed Lieutenant Governor. Remember, he replaced Greg Bell. Of having to ask Eddie to step off the commission because I was worried about the perception of a conflict of interest of the Lieutenant Governor being able to influence the Transportation Commission, because the commission makes pretty big decisions, right? They pick the projects that we all work on together. And so I had to ask Eddie to step down. I didn't know if the then Lieutenant Governor was going to hold it against me. But he immediately jumped up and said, I want you to be on my team. And he started talking about why and how he wanted to lead as a governor. He said, I don't want to be a governor that makes decisions with the goal of being reelected. I want to be a governor that makes big things happen. And he said, I want to do big shit. Now, this is the second floor of the Capitol. I'd never heard the word shit on the second floor of the Capitol. I've certainly heard it on the third floor in very loud terms, yelled at me multiple times by many different legislators over the years. But I'd never heard that on the second floor. That's more refined. You know, we like to think the executive branch is a little more refined than the legislature. No legislators here, right? Where's the AGC guy there, right? No, no leaks. And so I kind of like that. That's felt like I wanted to work for somebody that wanted to make a difference, that wanted to do big stuff, that would actually be willing to make decisions, even if not everybody was saying, we love this. And you can probably think about a few examples where we've made decisions where not everybody has loved it. And so I kind of took that as a call to action. And I hope we've been working, you know, as an organization to try to make big things happen and not be afraid or timid on these things. Because to think about it, the stuff we do is around for 50 to 75 years. The stuff we do affects every single person in this country, in this state, in your town. And what's kind of hard for our business, I acknowledge this, is when we do a really great job and transportation just flat works, nobody thinks about it. Nobody notices it. When do people notice transportation?
Yeah.
What?
Traffic jam.
Traffic jam, like trying to leave the office and why is the merge onto 201 so congested? What's wrong with that? Lisa, what's wrong with that? Why? We need more lanes. They notice it when there's a crash, they hit a pothole, they're running into our construction jobs, or they're jammed up. And that's, you know, that is kind of a difficult part of our jobs, to kind of create a success where they don't notice us. And everyone wants to be noticed, right? You work hard, you want to be noticed, you want to be acknowledged, you want to be thanked. And we're trying to create this vision of transportation where people can go where they want, when they want, how they want, and to do it safely. So that it's a completely frictionless experience. You know, so we lower the cost of moving freight. We give people access to be able to get the best jobs they want, the best jobs they can. When you think about, you know, mobility, the better transportation works, the more people have options for jobs. If you're a company and you're hiring, the better the transportation system works, you could attract more people because more people can get to where you need them to be. It's access to jobs, it's access to recreations, it's access to education. It's about safe communities. And so it's a really, you know, remarkable thing that we're trying to do. We're trying to create this foundation for our entire society. And to do it in a way where people just don't even notice it. It's really an important thing we do. And so the jobs that all of you have, even though they're hard, you work long hours, you're doing something that makes a difference for people. And having a job that pays good money is important, right? You got to support your families, but I believe having a job that does that, but also helps people, gives purpose. And that's what I think we can do in transportation. We can give people a sense of purpose, of making a difference. And that's why I think it's the best job in the world. Now, I wasn't smart enough to pick transportation when I was going to school. I had to try multiple times. I was just this ping pong bouncing around. You know, I thought I wanted to be a geologist. So my first degree was geology, and I worked in the oil fields. That wasn't so good because my company went out of business. I had no job, and I'm dropped in a motel room in Billings, Montana in December. No job, half of one last paycheck, no vehicle. And so I decided to go back and get a civil engineering degree. But the idea is, I'm going to combine geology and civil engineering. I'm going to go into groundwater. Never did groundwater. Got a summer job at UDOT. Thought that would be better than bartending, because that's how I was putting myself through school. And so I just happened into this field. And the longer I've been in it, the more I realize how lucky I have been to be doing something that makes a difference for every single person. Now, when you're doing something that makes a difference, I believe we need to do it as best as we can. I believe everyone in this business has a lot of pride. Is anyone here not proud about what they do? I think we are. I think we're proud about what we do. Show of hands, how many people were at the UDOT complex 5 or 6 weeks ago when we had the structures workshop? What did I say? Chris, what did I say? Build quality and I know it's my expectation that when we do our work, we do it great. We build great projects. I'm telling you guys, I hold myself to, I hope you see as a high standard. I feel I'm holding myself to a high standard. And we need to hold all of ourselves to a high standard. And I think we've been a little complacent as an organization. We have lamented the fact that we can't add employees. I've said this before. It's easier for me to get $100 million to do projects than it is to add one employee to Utah Department of Transportation. And so we are significantly understaffed compared to any DOT in the country. And I think we've used that as an excuse sometimes. And we've started to lose our core competencies, of design, construction, maintenance, and operations. Those are core competencies that we as an owner need to maintain, to be able to work with the contracting community, the consulting community, and to be able to say, no, that's not right. Let's figure this out together. Our goal will always be to be fair to everyone. Even if the contract says we can screw you, we're not going to do that. We're going to be fair. But we're going to up our game. We're going to more fully staff our construction crews. You're going to see larger UDOT construction crews than we've had before. We're going to start to train our construction crews. In fact, starting next week, April 1st. April 1st, we've developed up to over 275 different training modules for our construction inspectors, materials folks. And they're all going to go through this. It's going to be, if you need this, if this is what's happening out on the project, here's the training materials for them. And so you're going to see UDOT folks who are stepping up their game in terms of their expertise, their ability to stand there with you and solve problems. But they're also going to be there to say, wait a minute, that's not the quality we all expect. And how can we work towards getting to that quality? Now, that same training materials will be available to our contractors and our consultants in the fall. So we're kind of testing it out, but we've made a large investment. We went to the legislature last year and we got money to start developing these modules. We went to the legislature last year to be able to fully staff our construction crews so that we can be better partners out there. This is the idea of building for the future. You're going to see us throughout UDOT working to build a department to meet the future needs of Utah. And I'll talk a little bit about what I see as a future here, because we're in a really envious position of, I think, any other state in the country in terms of our dependence, our lack of dependency on the federal government. We're in a pretty good position for that right now. And so, see what else I wanted to mention here. Lucky I didn't read through this stuff. Okay. I said most of that. Yeah, I think I talked enough about that. Let me give you a few snapshots of Brad. Don't take any pictures. I'm just kidding. Your hair's getting long. So one of the things I came out of this session recognizing is that when they trust the organization, they tend to lob different problems at you. And so I've thought about changing the name. I mentioned it to the governor last week. He did not jump up and down with this idea. From UDOT to UDOT-S. And he thought I was going to say UDOT Department of Transportation and shit. No, it's and stuff. Because they lob things like housing, homelessness, broadband. What else did they lob at us? Oh, loan infrastructure, loan program, things that don't fit with our transportation nook. They lobbed it at UDOT. And all of a sudden now we're going to have to figure out how to make that work within the organization and kind of meld it in. And I'll talk a little bit about some of this stuff. So you probably know that Ryan Smith, the Smith Entertainment Group, SEG, brought a hockey team to Utah. I guess the Utah Hockey Club. Are we going to get a name, Ben? Or is that going to be the name?
They're working on it.
They're working on it. And what they want to do is they want to create an entertainment district, basically connecting, the Salt Palace side with where the Delta Center is. And we did all kinds of scenarios for the legislators because they were interested in helping participate. One of these was a tunnel, basically taking 3rd West, 3 lanes in each direction, underground from about 1st South through North Temple. And we did some other scenarios, shorter tunnels. And, bottom line is the shortest one, the cheapest one was about $850 million was the estimate. And the state did not have any extra money this session. And so we were able to take our existing cash flow and show that we could free up $300 million through cash flow and be able to put that towards something at 300 West and South Temple. What that looks like, we're not sure. We laid out a scenario where we dropped 3rd West down 10 feet. We put a 200-foot wide pedestrian bridge over. SEG didn't like that much. So we're going to help facilitate a conversation with SEG, the local business owners, the Salt Lake City and Salt Lake County to see what we can do with $300 million to create that entertainment district. This is coupled with a fair amount of money that was identified for redoing the Salt Palace. The Salt Palace has one big ballroom right now. And so that means really one large convention at a time. And they're going to expand that to have 2 large ballrooms so they can host 2 conventions at a time. And so That along with, they're gonna put out some leases. They're gonna try to recontract out who manages the Salt Palace and even who manages the Bravenel Hall. And there's gonna be some good competition about that, but the goal is to kind of create a much more dynamic downtown. And the idea of like Bravenel Hall right now will host usually about 2 events a week. They'd like to keep that busy 6 days a week, maybe 7 days a week, holding different events there. So they're trying to create something where there's always people and events going on downtown. And that's what this 300 million, whatever project we're gonna call it right now, is gonna be. And so we're gonna try to facilitate a public process to see if we can come to consensus on what that might look like. The other piece, so that's, I'll call that the UDOT entertainment portfolio. And the other piece is housing, a couple pieces on housing. So you probably know housing affordability remains one of the state's biggest issues. It's actually one of the biggest issues around this country, right? And I don't know about you guys, but when I bought my house in the early 80s, it felt like a huge price tag. In fact, I had 2 roommates living in our house to help us pay the mortgage because it was such a big deal. And now I realize how lucky I was to buy a house at that time, because it is completely untouchable now. I don't know how younger folks do it anymore and how they get into housing. And so the legislature has been looking for ways over the last couple sessions to try to lower the cost of housing. The governor's goal would be to create housing that's detached. He thinks that if people are living in their own home, that's not, attached like a condo or a townhouse, he thinks there's more ownership in the community, you participate more in the community, those kind of things. We own a lot of right-of-way, UDOT. We've been around this month, it's our birthday, 116 years as a department. And we've bought a lot of right-of-way. In fact, next to the federal government, we're the 2nd largest property owner in the state of Utah. I didn't know that. Because the way we've worked has always been forward. We're forward looking. We're looking at, okay, we got these projects to do. Okay, we're gonna design them. We're gonna buy the right-of-way. And then we got this project to do. We're gonna design them, buy the right-of-way. Then all of a sudden you realize across the state, we have lots of land that we don't even have roads on. Because a lot of times we would buy entire parcels, build the road, and there's these pretty significant pieces all the way. So we have thousands of parcels of property around the state. And the idea with this idea is that we will show what properties are available, and developers will work with, it's called the Utah Housing Authority. The UHA is an independent state agency that receives some state money. And what the developers will say, you know what, I want to build, this on this lot, this piece of UDOT land. And we're going to have this percentage of quote affordable houses or homes on this. And it might be apartments, it might be townhouses. They're looking for density. And when a developer comes in, you think about it, they have to buy the land. Then they have to get it all permitted. Then they have to build it. And then they can turn around and start to sell it and get occupants in. And that's when they get money. So developers are holding on to putting out a lot of money and holding on to that for 3 to 5 years. And so the idea here is if they identify UDOT land that is surplus, they will pay the appraised value of that land in the existing condition, but they won't actually have to pay us until they get residents coming in, until they start making money. So it will lower their cost of owning that land. That's the idea. So, and we benefit because we're going to get actually that money that for the sale of that land goes back into the transportation fund and is available for the commission to select projects from. Does that kind of make sense? It's a little bit of we're a holding company, I guess, for while the developers are bringing those houses onto the market. So it's a little complicated in terms of how the timing is going to work, but I see it benefiting us because, we're going to be able to sell the land, and the developers should be able to offer homes at a lower price. The The other housing piece that we're involved in is, yeah, there's actually three pieces. Is we're doing a infrastructure loan program. This came out literally, I think the third or fourth last day of the session, and it was like, what's this? And it evolved. I think there was 7 different substitutes on this thing. And what this is there's Salt Lake County sales tax money right now that is, the county council has approved. And what the legislature created is a, I don't even know what we're called. So it's myself, it's the director of GOEO. So that was Ryan Starks, who just announced his retirement. So there'll be a new director of GOEO, and Steve Walthrop, who was a former representative and who is now the governor's housing, I call him the housing czar. He doesn't like that title, housing person. The three of us will be a board, and we will be able to issue bonds. Well, I guess I issued the bonds of up to $70 million. We're using the county money to pay it back. So this is no money out of our pocket. And we will be able to give loans to entities. And it started off as just municipalities, but it also included public entities. So it could be some of these independent state agencies to be able to build infrastructure, roads, sewer, water, power, to help facilitate affordable housing. So we're gonna have to determine, is this a project that will deliver affordable housing? And if so, let's see if we can give them a loan. We have authorization to issue bonds up to $70 million. And UDOT has to administer that. Once that board of 3 makes a decision what project to give a loan to, then we administer that. So that's another thing that we'll do. The last housing piece is related to, again, holding money, and it's funny, I guess it's another $300 million. So last year, the legislature identified what they called high-risk money that they set aside. And they moved it over into our budget, but they said, we're gonna take year 1, and we're gonna put it into an account that developers can apply for low-interest loans, up to $300 million. But the treasurer, because it was sitting with the state treasurer, has to pay that back to UDOT in 2027. So this was in 24, 25, and 27. End of fiscal year 27, they had to pay it back. Nobody took out any loans, and they decided they wanted to restructure how they did it to make it easier for people to take out down loans. And so they extended this program till 2028. So they're still holding our $300 million until 2028. That comes back into the program in 2028. And so that's another housing program for us, I guess. What else? I'll end with, did anyone hear about anything going on in Salt Lake City? See Chris smiling. So pretty interesting. So Salt Lake City, Mayor Mendenhall, they've been working hard to create a safer environment. About 4 years ago, 3 to 4 years ago, they had a couple of fatalities where pedestrians got hit. And so Salt Lake City has been working very proactively to slow down traffic and to basically create more walking and biking lanes. And the community, from all appearances, really likes us. With the exception, we didn't realize until this legislative session, with the exception of a large portion of the business community. And in fact, they came in and met with us yesterday. But they came out in force during the session, and they wanted legislators to keep Salt Lake City from ever taking away a traffic lane or even narrowing a traffic lane or doing speed bumps. And this went back and forth. It was really uncomfortable. It's still a very uncomfortable position for us to be, because what ended up is we now have to approve any kind of changes that Salt Lake City makes, even on their local roads. which hasn't ever happened before. And I'll tell you, every city in the state is looking at this going, oh my gosh, what if they do this to me next? And so we're in this really, I'll call it very uncomfortable position of having to do a quantitative analysis of the impacts of narrowing lanes or taking lanes away. And so there's a lot of tension going on with this. And the more I become aware, there's tension around the country. And, there's a very, very organized group called Smart Growth America. It's a national group, and they've been working around the country to try to, they're basically people that want to eliminate cars in communities and cities. They want to slow them down. They want to narrow everything down, and they've been very effective. And now there's pushback against it. And my lesson learned on this is, if you're going to do a bike lane or a pedestrian path, you're more successful if you're adding to the existing system as opposed to if you're taking something away to do it. And so we don't know yet how we're going to manage this. We have to figure that out. But Salt Lake City is kind of on a hold on any of their, traffic calming that they wanted to do. And I'll acknowledge Mayor Mendenhall. She's a wonderful person, and she handled this difficult situation because she had this issue. She had the homeless issue with public safety going on, and she handled it like a champ. She was very good to work with, and we're looking forward to working with Salt Lake City on this. But as you see us kind of, I'm gonna guess we're gonna stumble through this, try to figure out how to do this. But the legislature put us in charge now of Salt Lake City on these things. So just be careful what you ask for, because we certainly didn't ask for this. I've got 2 slides about money. If you guys want to look at it, it's okay. Do you want to know how to do this? Hang on. He doesn't want me to touch the computer.
No,
That's what our folks do at work too. They barely let me use a phone. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So, okay. Legend on top. Transportation Investment Fund. So that's the second from the top. That's the red line. And I'll describe why we see these trends. That's basically the capacity program for the state. That's the statewide sales tax. And one of the things that happened, I'll just say this right now, that was, I think, it was completely unreported, but was one of the most powerful things that was done for our future is, remember I mentioned the $300 million? That was coming as an appropriation. So every year they would have to appropriate that. And what they said is this is going to be ongoing. But let me tell you, when you're in a year like this, those appropriations are always tenuous. What they did is they converted that $300 million to a percentage. And so that percentage now is in state statute, much more difficult to take away, and it grows. So they made it a percentage. So it grows. That 300 million will not be 300 million in the future. It will continue to grow as our economy grows. And that's why you see this trend start to go like that. What's that little, we don't have a pointer, do we? See that little peak right there? That little rooftop? That's the $300 million I was talking about coming back
middle
in.
button.
Is that where?
Yep, middle button.
That right there, that's the $300 million coming back in 2028. And then you start to see how the sales tax continues to grow. So this is our program continuing to grow into the future. This represents the total. The green is our federal funds. We made a very deliberate decision. The federal program expires in September of 2026. So we're working on what we call reauthorization of that program. It's going to be a tough reauthorization because last time when they reauthorized it, about 45% of the federal funds are backfilled with general fund money. Not too long ago, this federal program was completely funded with gas tax. And that's not the case anymore. We expect that if they're going to hold it level, so we made this assumption level, We expect that if they're gonna hold it level, the general fund contribution is probably gonna climb to 65%, 55 to 65% of whatever they authorize, which becomes really, really difficult, and it really puts our program more on a year-to-year basis than a long-term program. So the federal programs, here, highway system construction, this is the state gas tax, we're showing that flat, that doesn't grow very fast. And so this is just the portion of the state gas tax that's used to go to construction. This isn't my salary. We've taken my salary out of this, and it would be much higher. And then this is the transit. So that's sitting around $95 million a year is what we get in the transit program. So this is all capital stuff going out to construction. Why is this? Are we losing money? What they did over the last 3 years is we got one-time money. The legislature likes the stuff you do, right? And they love to throw it to this one-time construction. They're not adding employees. That's a cost that goes on forever, right? And so what they're doing is they said, well, let's stick it in transportation. So the last 3 years, we got almost $1.5 billion. This is money coming in and appropriated. This isn't money going out. A lot of this money is still waiting to go out to construction. And it's working through the process. I guess the other message I'd make on this, last message I make on this is a very, very bright future for us, where we're not dependent on the federal program. We need the federal program. That's what's paying, or, that's what we use for pavement and bridge maintenance. That's pretty much what we use it for. And so we need the federal program. Can we go? I think I have one more slide. I haven't seen it yet. That's not it. Okay. I have not seen this one yet. This is just updated. So this is our total ongoing budget is 2.5 billion. We were 2.4 billion last year. And so we have on our website, you can go in, you can look at what portions, you can see the federal money is about 17% of our total budget. In a lot of states, that's 50, 60, 70% of their budget. And you can see the different programs here. We run a rural transit program that's all federally funded. So we work on rural transit all throughout the state. We have the aeronautics division. So we work with the 46 local airports around the state. We have state money going into aeronautics, mostly aviation fuel from Salt Lake International. Now Provo's starting to generate some as well. And that money we use to match the FAA money. And we work with the 46 local airports to do infrastructure projects there. A lot of you guys probably do those. There's always fun one in Cottonwood Canyons. As you may or may not have heard, we're in litigation on that project. We have funding sitting, waiting to go to phase 1, which will be well, that money isn't for the Cottonwoods, the EIS is for the gondola. That's what's under litigation, but the EIS, the litigation also captured the phase 1, which is buses and transit stops, at New Transit Center down at the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon, as well as transit stops in front of Alta, Stobart, Brighton, and Solitude. So the buses don't have to go down into the parking lot. We haven't been able to order the buses yet because there's of the 4 litigants. There's 20 different claims. 13 of those 20 claims keep us from going to phase 1. And they could have challenged the gondola. And if they just challenged the gondola, we'd be working on getting those buses delivered and building those transit centers. That's a good drama going on there. So that's kind of our program. I'd love to answer any questions you guys have, or I've got the guys with all the questions. And I think they want to ask you guys some questions too, and try to have more of a dialogue. So you guys are going to be put on the spot a little bit. But what do you guys have for me? Brett?
What's the timeline for the I-15 extension for Salt Lake Farm?
Great question. Lisa, what's the timeline? Gina, does everyone know Lisa Wilson? So come on up, you guys. Come on up. Carmen, Ben, come on up. Come on up.
Yeah.
Cody would know it, yep. Why don't you, so introduce yourselves.
Lisa Wilson, Deputy Director for Engineering and Operations.
Ben,
Ben Hewitt, Deputy Director, Planning and Investment.
Carmen Swanwick, Project Development Director.
what's your I-15 timeline, Lisa?
Help me out here, Cody. Later this year.
November of this year, the RFP will be.
Cody, come on and just say it.
He just did.
RFP November of this year.
RFQ this summer.
Yep.
What time?
Do you have it nailed down that precise?
You just heard it.
22nd?
The 22nd, we're doing a extended procurement, so we'll have the RFP out for almost a year. So award, October, November of 26. What's the cost on this one?
The projected cost.
Cost.
Cost, $3 million.
Close. We're at about 2.8. We need to work with the Transportation Commission to get the rest of the funding. We have 1.7 right now.
Program value. Yeah, program value.
What were you saying, Ben?
Program value, yeah,
What does that mean?
everything.
Not the construction amount.
So right away, utilities, PEC. Questions? See, I was clever. I brought people that knew the answers. Well, Carmen, what question do you have for these guys?
Do I?
Yeah, do you have any?
I guess, speaking of I-15, we've done a lot of work over the past few years with our alternative delivery. In kind of changing some of the processes and the way equations and just, updating the template. So I guess I'd like to hear from the industry perspective, like, how's that going? What are your thoughts?
Don't be
Well,
politically
Parker,
correct.
come on, right there.
I'm just trying to think, I think we've given you a lot of our feedback in our delivery meetings. I think we've expressed some of our concerns with the formula of MT and how those are calculated, and just really to spend some time and do some beta testing on the formula to make sure there's no ways of, you know, kind of getting some kind of advantage. I think we've express some of those, give an example of those, and I think it's just take a look at it and see if it can be easily in one area.
Right.
Because all of us just want a level, like.
Yep. That's true. That's what we all want.
Yeah, we have spent a lot of effort over the past few years. So, I think we listened and we worked together as partners and, we'll continue to develop the progressive design build and how we manage those type of projects. And so, we'll just continually try, work with the industry and our partners to continually improve that, so.
Ben, do you have any questions?
I mean, I guess I'll throw it out there and, this could be something that you don't have to like answer on the spot because I know I'm not always great on the spot, but we're getting into some new areas with our transit and trails teams and navigating some new processes for us. Like we haven't done the level of work with FTA processes versus FHWA processes we're doing right now. So if there's tips and tricks or anything that, experience that any of you all want to share with us, I'd be happy to hear any feedback on that because it is a little bit of a learning curve and it's different than what we've what we've historically done, so we want to learn and everything, so I guess I'll throw that out there if anybody has anything immediate, but if not, you know, obviously feel free to reach out and share anything that you all have learned in other areas working through, you know, some of those processes that are new to us.
So Ben's side of the shop has the transit piece.
No magic, no, there's no magic wands like right off the right off the top.
Nothing. The only thing that I would say is, I think with the PDD delivery model and what we're kind of living right now, is just the longer timeline and figuring out the best process for pricing iterations and all that, just because of the FFGA and the additional time that is not normal to UDOT, and what's the best way to do that through pre-construction, because it does significantly increase the amount of time in pre-construction.
Yeah, that time to get to the full grant agreement.
Yeah, right, and
that's-
then how or if early work packages can happen, or what's the best way for the department and the contractor to keep the project moving forward, but not overcommit, because we're still waiting for that commitment from the federal government. So I think living what we're living right now on FR2X is probably like the biggest challenge of just it's just a longer duration from when we would typically go to like a CDP2, when we actually get dollars in hand, right? And
Yeah,
how we want to handle that as a team, I think is probably one of the biggest things that we're still trying to figure out on 2X, and I think it's going to be an issue whenever there's federal funding involved.
yeah, the FTA grant process is interesting and new to us, and it's not super comfortable when you're trying to go and
Yeah.
you don't have, you know, it's like used to, like, if there's a grant, you either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
And now we're trying to figure out, do we take risk and, you know, spend before we have full funding grant agreement, or?
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's an inexact art. I don't know the answer to it, but yeah, I think just figuring out that solution for FR2X, and then that way we can try to put something in place to fully understand it for the next one, because I think, like you said, it is typically, I think normal UDOT program, we will be going through construction ideally later this year, but the reality is pushing it out an additional year. And then how we're handling that additional pricing phase or escalation risk and all that stuff, it's just a challenge.
At the federal level, the money I showed you was what we call formula funds. So those are monies that through the legislation, we know are coming, and we know what categories the money's coming from. A big part of the IIJA was a discretionary programs. So these are programs that the USDOT has discretion on picking. And we're going through a very different transition with this administration than I've ever seen before. In that every grant, even if we receive the grant, if we're not in a grant agreement right now, is on hold. And they're searching for any terms within either the notice of funding availability or the actual proposals that are within the executive orders, and other terms that are not even in the executive orders, and determine whether or not they're going to honor those, even if the money came to the state. And so all the discretionary program right now is who knows what's going on. That was my conversation I had this morning with USDOT they just made another decision yesterday. And so there's a lot of variability. Now, this is for Frontrunner, it's the CIG program, Capital Improvement Grant. I think that's going to be a safer grant program than others. But it's still tenuous right now in terms of how this administration is managing it. They are still very, very light on people. In terms of people to actually run the program. And they've put a complete hold on our local office being able to even say anything or send anything. And so this is a very unusual transition. So we'll try to manage this as best we can. That's why I'm happy not to be as dependent on the feds. Lisa, what do you?
Okay, so we have a lot going on, as you've noticed, we have a ton of projects. So what I'm curious about from your perspective is what risks are out there that you think maybe we're not seeing? And what would you want us to do different going forward? I know y'all have thoughts on this.
What do you wish we could see? Or we're aware of?
Eric, come on. You always have something for me.
I just, you know, when we do see risk, I would hope that your PMs could be so receptive, actually. We will identify, you know, an issue or a problem, a timeline, and more often than not, it's just, like, it's just trying to get it out.
So is this in the procurement process
This is just in every.
or overall?
Digital, Carlos, you know, nothing's ever perfect, we all know that. I mean, that's not the expectation, but, it kind of puts you in a precarious position, like, well, how do we estimate this? For instance, if the timeline screwed up or what happened, like, there's a myriad of reasons, and I think you should take the next 2 weeks and at least acknowledge it before you support. I will deal with it at project level, and the board guy or gal, which creates the mold.
That's getting down to the individual project manager. Thank you. I mean,
I am empathetic.
I'm just trying to think through how to kind of, you know, I don't know if I want every project manager to be the same, but you guys would like some consistency probably, and
Well, there's a comment about getting $100 million as opposed to one person. That's a little bit right.
I will say some members of this association had worked with legislative leadership in the past, speaking and helping support additional staffing for us. And someone acknowledged, you know, you guys are partners, so we didn't ask them to do that. But they took it on themselves because they wanted to, you know, they felt more comfortable having a UDOT person there. So.
Maybe there's a process, Lisa, that I just don't know about it. On your look at these projects, maybe to Eric's point, before those come out or as they're developed, is there a way to get industry input to some of the risks and things that will be seeing in the documents? But if you just gotta deal with it at that time, you have input ahead of time.
Thoughts? I mean, is this on the specs or on the individual project?
Basically, there could be a number of things that will, everybody's got to kind of deal with that on their own terms, so it's set in stone once done.
Yeah, I mean, we've done project previews on some. It's not our standard practice.
Yeah, and I think there's always opportunity, but we try to have those conversations with the one-on-ones and, you know, having more of those conversations.
But that's not, we don't do one-on-ones on, yeah,
Oh, hard bid job.
hard bid jobs.
Yeah, I mean, going with what Lisa said, we're trying to do more project previews. And expanding like what we do with those two, where we would have like one-on-ones associated with them now as well. So we're kind of working through that, but yes, we definitely have opportunity there to have some more interaction.
If you see projects that you
Yeah.
wish we would do that on, let us know so we can kind of get a feel
Yeah,
for what would help.
And if you see anything, you know, like you want more information, I mean, I'm always open, call me. You know, or like if you see a problem on a job, and I know there's several of you in here that call me on a regular basis when there's situations. Been dealing with a couple here recently, so I'm always open, like if you see something, like Lisa said, are we at a big risk here? Are we putting you at risk? Just bring it to my attention and we'll work through it.
We do have, so we do have some programming workshops coming up. I think the one in May with the Transportation Commission is where we're gonna deal with a lot of projects, and we're not gonna go over those projects. You know, a lot of our programs, like our pavement programs, if you know, talking about those types of projects, we're not gonna go over each individual project in detail, but there are gonna be project lists that show up there. So that's, you know, you don't have to tune into the whole meeting unless you want to, you know,
Those are
they're
all
on YouTube.
online.
Yeah, they're on YouTube. But you can review we're gonna have all the materials available on the Transportation Commission website afterwards. So, you know, that might be a good way to look through those lists. And it's probably, those projects are probably gonna be a few years out, but so it is a look ahead. But if there's specific ones where maybe, like Lisa said, if we can determine like, hey, this one we might be more,
Oh, there it is.
might make more sense to do a project preview on than others, we can look at that.
It worked well, in my view, the business insight, but I just like to see an avenue for digital feedback from once you saw it.
There was a question over here about unsecured loans.
I drive around a lot, and also something we see is like unsecured roads, or excuse me, unsecured loads on like the freeway. And I'm not sure if that would fall into like UDOT capacity, or if it's more just like each individual, or like more learning, or company.
Oh, yeah.
But I wanted to throw that out there, it's something that I see on a daily, like, well, I'm not on the road.
One of my very favorite topics.
Right?
We do awareness campaigns and social media, and we also get to clean it up, right? When we do a lot of large litter runs, our crews do, they do them every couple of days to go pick up the big things.
Couches.
Yeah, and then the small litter pickup is constant. We've upped our game in that realm by hiring some contractors, and the legislature did give us some money this session so that we can hire regular contractors to regular pickups on our.
They gave our money back.
Well, they gave money back and an extra $1 million. We're so lucky. Yeah.
So I was just, this is the UDOT webpage, UDOT.utah.gov. If you come down to Transportation Commission here, this will have the commission agendas. This is the workshop. You'll see on Thursday, after our meeting, we'll publish the 2025 workshop. It'll have the programs, and then in May, we'll have the projects. Lists of projects, so, you know, list of paving jobs, the bridge, you know, the hard bid jobs will be there as well. And so we don't go through the commission every project. There's a lot of them. And so that's kind of the place to go and find out where those lists are. That's initially programmed, and then Carmen, you must maintain a list of projects.
Yes,
Everyone here knows how to get them.
yes. They should contact me.
If you don't,
And they've been handed out at every meeting, so.
I have copies.
Hard copy, Carlos has paper.
They won't tell me where it is on the computer. So.
It's secret, Carlos.
We don't give him.
EDB job, 915 SR 97 interchange, 5600 south, April 1. Oh, that's of 2023. That's under construction.
Yeah, those are out.
Well underway.
I still have to maintain that list.
So SR 37, SR 108 to 250 west. 110 million, April 1. U 111. 29 million, April 1. Anyone want a list? Here it is.
Not my favorite.
That's not your favorite list?
Not U 11.
Oh,
It's not our favorite project.
no, that was a gifted job.
Yeah.
That was-
Another question, follow up to your, you said all the process, that I think progress from my point of view is really positive.
Oh,
I'm curious, from your point of view, the department's point of view, how do you feel about it?
from my standpoint, I think we made a ton of progress. I think, you know, we were kind of at a point where the risk was a lot on the contractors and we're really worked over the past few years to balance that. And to have those conversations up front. I mean, I still think we have work to do. You know, we did increase the stipend too. I hope everybody noticed that. But there's still work to do in those areas. And then like Mike said, with the equation. And so I think we did make a ton of progress in balancing risk and just the approach and providing more information up front. I don't know, if Cody, Josh, you've been in it for the past couple of years, your thoughts?
No, I think that's fair. I mean, I think that with the agency's help and review of the RFP, we've really tried to, I mean, my focus really was the risk section, you know, who should be managing this risk? It shouldn't all be you guys, and trying to swing that a little bit back. Hopefully you saw some of that with the changes that we made. But yeah, I mean, you all have my phone number too, so feel free to reach out if you have suggestions. I reach out to you as well to bounce things off to you. So, yeah, I think we're making a lot of progress.
Hey, Lisa, what did we change in terms of our selection teams?
So recently on our selection teams for PDB design build, we've changed the makeup of those teams to include higher level folks. So they'll all have region director or deputy director on them, some higher level folks in Carmen's group. Where previously what you would have seen is more region people, and your EM ones and twos doing the selection. So you'll see group leaders and, division leaders in these groups now and from now on.
And can I add that also we'll, you know, look more at statewide of those positions as well, where it's not just centrally focused on, say, one region. So really trying to broaden that perspective.
Does everyone know Sean? New construction engineer,
Yeah.
brand new. We just minted him.
Yeah, Sean, just came over from maintenance and the director of construction. Most of you worked with.
Hey, Carlos, maybe just a question for you or the rest of the group, but the legislature, again, you're controlled by the state legislature as far as funding.
They like to think they
budget.
control me, but
Yeah. Any concerns or trends that you're seeing from maybe this last session, maybe prior sessions that we should be aware of, maybe for the future?
trends. It's hard to say that they're trends. The legislature is they react to sometimes not even basic facts. So I'm not sure if I would say I see trends. The trend I would say is they are kind of afraid about how fast we're growing. And there is this sense that even though there's about now think about this, 26% of the statewide sales tax now is going to the capacity program. That means it's earmarked. That means they only have 74% of the sales tax to allocate to all the other needs, all the other departments in the state. And so there is this real concern that they want to keep Utah, special for what Utah is known for. And there's a feeling amongst a lot of our residents as well that it's not going in a great direction. When they can't park at their recreation areas, or you see what's happening with congestion going south out of I-15. And we don't really have a big project for that. We have a big project for the north, but we don't really have something other than front runner. So get it done. Did you say we were waiting on you? But no, it's, and Mountain View, but it's a concern. And so there's this very much this desire that we keep going as fast as we can. And we keep delivering the projects. Like I said, I did not ask for this additional earmark. I didn't ask for the 300 million last year. That was the guy that I just said, I'll call him in a minute. That was President Adams. That was him and Mike Schultz. And so we are blessed right now with the support we have at the legislature. And I like to think that the hardest job we have, I mean, people want more of it and they want it faster. That's our hardest job. I'm sorry, were you gonna?
Oh, no, I was gonna ask on that, on a similar note, is there anything we need to be aware of on the construction side for federal changes, regulations that you guys are doing that we may not?
You know, on the federal side, I kind of whined a little bit about the new administration, how they're holding up money. But they've been really, really receptive to ideas to accelerate project delivery. So we've been able to give the new administration and members of Congress some really good ideas on NEPA, on streamlining the environmental process, on some permitting reforms, some wetland reforms, and there's a lot of willingness, both at the congressional leadership level and the administration, to try to find ways to speed up the process. So I think that's a really good thing. It's going to be a while before they get the people in place and they feel comfortable with the programs for things to kind of get back on track. I was a little surprised with the crane bill this year. I did not really understand why we would want that. And, we finally got it to a place where we exempted the UDOT projects, but that would have really made your jobs really hard. Essentially, every time you move a crane on a project, you'd have to do a geotechnical report. And as a former geotechnical engineer, I was pretty proud about what we did, but we were never known as fast. Nobody ever said, wow, that was faster than I expected. And so I was surprised at that. And so I think we need to think through about what we ask for sometimes. Well, the sponsor was good to work with on this. I was disappointed last session with that same sponsor on stormwater and the restrictions placed on us and you all with stormwater. And we were able to work with him over the interim and get us, again, exempted out of that stormwater piece. But they basically took a cookie cutter approach to building homes, just like building highways. And, they were initially trying to restrict us from even going on our projects to inspect compliance with stormwater. Because what they were directing it at was the city inspectors going on a home construction site. And so I guess let's be careful about how wide a brush we paint when we do things, because things can impact items of work that we didn't anticipate. And so let's continue to work together on those things.
Just one quick question. I know, Carlos, you showed like those one-time bumps in the funding, but with the governor's comments in the state of the state, now's the time to build, with the Olympics coming forward. I mean, obviously we can't foresee the future, but with the amount of large projects that UDOT already has on the books, what does that have the potential to do to accelerating projects or other projects being created or getting moved up?
Yeah, great question. And I had a conversation yesterday with Brad Wilson, who's the president and CEO for the Olympic Committee and the governor's office. And we were trying to think through what process we want to use to prioritize for our delegation and for the administration what are Olympic projects? And today, there are no quote Olympic projects. There's a general sense that we're gonna need a couple $100 million for security and for operations. Those are for things like, you know, bringing in more buses and rail cars, just like we did in 2002, and building park and ride lots. So the temporary stuff and the operational stuff. But there has not yet been put together the unique transportation plans. And there's more, I think there's like 40 more venues than we had in 2002. And so every event will have a transportation plan design. And everyone will try to, you know, design where are the people gonna come from? Where are they gonna go to a park and ride lot? Generally, it's gonna be park and ride lots, where they're gonna get on a bus, then go through security, and then go into the venue, and then come out, go back on a bus, go to the park and ride lot, leave, all while we're, you know, loading people in and out of venues. So there'll be a plan put together that the organizing committee will be in charge of. We'll embed a person or two along with UTA and the other transit districts in with that Olympic committee to come up with those plans. Once those plans are put together, that will help identify the quote Olympic projects. Today, we have, I would say we have a nexus with the Olympics on a couple projects we're working on. One is Front Runner, get it done. The other one is Kimball's Junction. And we just released an alternative analysis on Kimball's Junction. That's the access into Park City. That's been a high drama event. Then we have Morgan Interchange. That, have we finished the environmental document on that, Ben?
Not yet.
Not yet. Again, another speedy process.
Yeah, I think we're like May timeframe.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that doesn't have construction funding. So that's basically taking those Taft-Dibon interchange and building a consolidated full access freeway on the access up to Snow Basin. Again, people aren't gonna drive up to Snow Basin. And so the last time, if you remember, we had park and ride lots down at the base of the canyon. People got on buses down at the base of the canyon and took buses up to Snow Basin. That, I believe, has a nexus to the Olympics, and we'll probably be looking for ways to fund a project on that. The other project I'll mention is probably Kimball's Heber Bypass, another easy project where everyone in the community loves it. We're releasing the alternative analysis this week.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Thursday?
Yeah.
Tomorrow, Thursday. And so that will be fun. That's probably $1 billion, that project. We don't have money tied to that. Is that needed for the access just for one venue to Soldier Hollow? Probably not. Would it be nice? People are gonna really want it. People are gonna probably be pushing for that. So these are projects that we don't have construction dollars on yet. I'll mention the, what's called right now, the Orange Line. So it's a new extension of tracks downtown and up to Research Park. You're probably gonna see us recommend funding to start an environmental process on that May, probably May. And so we'll start looking at that. Those are the ones that I see. Do you guys think of anything else off the top of your head? Those are the ones that I presently see as quote Olympic nexus to them, but they're projects we're doing anyhow. Anything we build needs to really be driven by what we need for the long term, you know, so it's already on the long range plan and we're working towards delivering that. We'll probably accelerate some projects, the ones that, such as I mentioned. That's what I anticipate. But Olympics, remember, the Olympics is 2 weeks. It's basically an operational event. It's basically heavy on travel demand management, scaring people away from areas, telling them not to drive, and then, you know, pushing them to mass transit, pushing them. In this case, we will push people to mass transit. So. It's your chance. Or you can grab us one-on-one as we leave here.
The meeting after.
Always, Joey. I just want to say thank you to all of you. Truly, thank you. I know we have the best contractors in the country. And we can continue to do amazing things here, and we will. And so it's exciting. I love what we do. And I hope you do as well, because it makes a difference. So thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, please.